Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. This is going to be my series thoughts on The Flash, primarily focusing on my final thoughts on the final season, and just saying the word final a lot. If you're wondering, why is he covering The Flash? He only covers PR stuff. I put up a poll like a week ago about whether I should cover my thoughts on it, mainly just for the idea of me doing it for fun, and also I do get a handful of requests every now and then in videos and whatnot to do my thoughts on various Arrowverse stuff, because I used to talk about it on the old RR Streets podcast and stuff. So again, I put up a poll, and the results were yes for the most part, as well as the other result, which was This House is Bitchin', which is the secret second yes. So I decided to do it. You know, this isn't my usual content. I'm putting it up on a Sunday, which is usually an off day for me, where I usually take the day off to catch up on things. So anyway, you don't have to watch this if you don't want to. This is just for fun. Unfortunately, no visuals. I have tried to do other Arrowverse videos in the past, and I got copyright strikes and stuff, so I don't want to have to deal with that, so I apologize about that. So it's just going to be my ugly mug talking to you. So let's just get started. I'm going to try to keep this just a skosh over 20 minutes maximum because, you know, I rewatched the series before season 9, so I have a lot of thoughts. I could do a whole season review of each one, breakdown, lots of thoughts swimming, but I want to keep it concise. But let's talk about the final season. Overall, like the last few seasons, it's been a mixed bag. But I want to say I think there were some positives. Like, personally, I enjoyed the Red Death arc for what it was. Honestly, the only real negative I had about it was the performance of Ryan's actor overdid it a few times to a really funny degree, but I just chose to chalk that up to her being insane. The character, not the actress. But I honestly enjoyed that for what it was. I remember Red Death being speculated on for a while. I thought it was cool to see. I thought for the context of the Flash series, the costume looked pretty cool. You know, I thought it was kind of cool what they did with the version of the character from what they could do. A lot of people were like, oh, it's not Batman, but even though Bruce Wayne does exist in the Arrowverse, like, number one, they still can't fully use Batman. Like, the Arrowverse and CW is lessened up on that restraint, but at the same time, they still can't show, like, a fully costumed Batman. And even if they could, it wouldn't make as much sense. So I thought it worked. I liked it. It felt like a mini version of a Flash season, where you have kind of a mystery speedster mixed with some episode of the week stuff with the Rogues. I enjoyed it for what it was. I liked getting to see Batwoman one last time. I liked some of the Arrowverse goodbye tours, as I always thought Ryan's character had a much better Arrowverse energy for interacting with the cast compared to Kate Kane, and I was disappointed she never got to interact more with the characters, so that was nice to see for me. And then we basically get all these interlude episodes, because the way they've been doing these last season is they do graphic novels and then interludes, which are effectively fillers or standalones. And then, like, the middle part of the season was just that. And there was definitely a mixed bag. You know, there's a conversation to be had about what type of fillers or whether to include filler in final season. It depends on the type of final season you're getting. All I'll say is, when you do have a longer final season where you have room, and you have a series where you might have enjoyable fillers, I don't mind that. Like, for example, I enjoy me a good Supernatural filler episode, so when they did some filler episodes in the final season that were just kind of standalone Hunt episodes, I was happy about that because it's kind of part of the farewell tour. So I don't mind them doing standalone episodes for that, but most of them weren't that great. I wasn't as mad as most people, but, like, the Nia one was fine. Like, I like Nia okay, and it was enjoyable, but I don't think it was necessary for the final season. I enjoyed the Barry and Iris bottle episode for what it was. You know, a lot of people weren't a fan of the episode where they brought back Becky. I didn't hate the episode, but I felt it was kind of a waste of a final season episode, primarily because if you bring back Becky because she's a season 4 character, they should have had her interacting with Barry, because she had some nice interactions with Barry in season 4. It had no meaning when she's interacting with all of the show's favorite side characters that she never met. I don't recall if she ever met Cecile, but the fact that I can't recall it says enough about that. However, there was, of course, one fantastic standalone episode amongst those, which was the return of Oliver Queen and Wally West. Now, I wish it would have been longer. That's what she said. That was an easy target. I'm really disappointed with myself. I'm wasting minutes in this video. Anyway, like, I would have loved to have, like, part 1 focus a little more on Wally, since he wasn't around a lot, and then part 2 on Oliver, and then bring it all together. With that being said, it was one of the strongest episodes of the season. I liked getting to get a little more closure on the Wally character. I didn't mind seeing Bloodwork back. I liked him. And most of all, I liked seeing Oliver back. Not just because, of course, it was great to see one last moment with him for the Arrowverse that's ending, but also, you know, there was a lot of discourse about how much Arrowverse tributes they should do for the season, since it's technically the last Arrowverse season. But regardless of any of that noise about the final season and everything, or the final of the Arrowverse, Oliver, I think, needed to be in the final season, because he's important to Barry's journey. You know, Barry's show backdoor piloted an Arrow. Arrow was in the pilot. Like, even if you just watched The Flash for some reason, you would pick up on the fact that Oliver was an important person to Barry. So I think it was very important that he appeared. And I loved, even though it was one thing that wasn't related to the Flash necessarily. I liked that he got a proper goodbye with Diggle, and his final scene with Barry mirroring the pilot dialogue was pitch perfect. I love that. Side note, if they knew the Arrowverse was ending, could they have not just made Dig the Green Lantern? Like, it was fine what they went for, but I feel like I wish if they would have known, they could have just had him suit up somewhere at the end. That would have been great. Such a disappointment that he didn't get to become a Green Lantern. Anyway, and then you have the final arc, the first of which was technically part 1 of 4, but it was arguably more standalone, which was the episode where we go back to the night Barry's mother died, which was the best episode of the season. Despite the fact that it was a very mixed season, I think was one of the best episodes in the series. Like, it's crazy to me because this era of the people working on the show deliver a very mixed bag, in my opinion. But they also have some really cool ideas and moments, and sometimes they really nail it. And it shocked me that the team delivering this very mixed final season could hone in on such an episode that felt like it was part of the original era. It was such a well-done episode, so many great moments of acting with Grant, with his parents. I really loved the episode. It was so emotionally rewarding as a fan that's watched from the beginning, but also recently doing a rewatch, revisiting all those old memories and enhancing my love for those early seasons. And my favorite thing about it, last thing I'll say about this episode was, what I loved about it is that when you watch the show, Barry starts off from the point of view of rookie Flash, seeing this future Flash, much more experienced, waving him off. But then what was cool about that, I mean, that was cool in general, but as an audience member, there was a cool meta aspect to it, to when we were watching, we see that future version of Flash, and they're thinking about, like, what adventures has this guy been up to? What's he been through? What's his story? How did he get there? How did he know to be there? All that type of stuff. And then now, this time, we're seeing it from the point of view of experienced Barry, looking back at rookie Barry with us watching the show at the beginning. I thought that was really cool, and I thought it was a great final episode for Matt Lyncher, is that how you say his name? The non-Wells Reverse Flash. And then you have the final Cobalt Blue arc. I'm going to be honest, just jumping straight to the finale to a degree, the finale was rushed, messy, a little disappointing in some areas. But I thought, outside of the, of course, focus on the side characters that I'm not a fan of, the build-up for it was great. I love the build-up for Cobalt Blue. He didn't get as much time to shine once he became Cobalt Blue, but I think he's arguably one of the strongest villains in the series just because you know who Eddie was. I felt like his motivations made sense. It had a really interesting and great build-up. Not to mention him having ties to Eobard, like part of the Eobard bloodline with the Reverse Flash was really cool. And I was wondering, like, how are you going to do the final villain without Reverse Flash? Because honestly, I know some people got sick of him. I personally never did. But I always felt he should have been the final villain of the series no matter what. But they kind of did his finale at season 8 because they weren't sure if that was going to be the finale. So this was a cool way to tie it back to season 1 and Reverse Flash to a degree instead of just doing a random new character or something weird. I really liked it. Outside of some little hiccups here and there, I really enjoyed it until the finale. Now, to be fair, I'll say I'm happy with the way it concluded. In regards to where everyone ended up, Barry happy with Nora finally being born. How did it take so long for Nora to be born? We met her like 4 seasons ago. But, where everyone ended up and the last scenes where everyone ends up happy, I was satisfied with where it ended because it was a nice ending of, like, I like those endings sometimes where it doesn't have to end with a character death or with all the characters being like, we're never gonna see each other again. This is memorable. I like it when it ends on a note that you feel that you can imagine in your head they're still having adventures out there. And I like that. So I'll say the journey of the episode itself for the final one was messy, but I'm happy with the conclusion, or at least satisfied. I set my expectations a little bit lower. I'm like, so long as I'm happy with where the characters end up and also, happy with a couple of the moments. And that's exactly what it was. Because there were some cool ideas, but it was so rushed. Like, it was cool to bring back all the primary Speedster villains. I wish they would have done more with them, seen some interactions. That should have been like a 2-parter alone and done more interactions. I know, to be fair, there was some hiccups behind the scenes. I saw in an interview that Grant had gotten sick, like, right when Teddy Sears' Zoom came on, so he never got to interact with him because of that. So I think there was some behind-the-scenes stuff from that, but lots of cool moments that were rushed through for a rushed conclusion. But there were some cool parts. Just seeing all the old Speedsters was great. Seeing them interact for a brief second was great. I loved seeing the return of Jay Garrick, as personally, one of my favorite things revisiting the series was actually John Wesley Shipp. I liked him fine the first run through, but I really appreciated the work he did in the series. As Barry's dad, especially in the scenes with season 1 where he's talking to Barry about knowing he's the Flash without admitting it. And, it was cool to see him return as Earth 90 Flash, but especially as Jay Garrick. Man, did he make the perfect Jay Garrick. Jay Garrick is such a good mentor Flash character. One of my favorite scenes of the series is still the one where he's explaining, like, time travel, consequences to Barry at the beginning of Flashpoint. So there was a series of highlight key moments that I liked. And I was satisfied with where the characters ended up, but the episode was kind of a mess, and I think it's unfortunate that a series that had honestly such high highs in the early seasons ended on a very mixed note with a mixed, talent behind the scenes. The last thing I want to say before I just talk about my blanket thoughts on the series overall is I thought what they did with Khione was so weird. Like, to be fair, I thought it was at least kind of nice they did something different, because I like, if you follow my videos for Power Rangers and Sentai stuff, particularly Power Rangers, I like going away from the source material. I'm a weird fan. Everyone else is always like, stay true to the source material. I'm like, source material? Trash. Do your own thing. That's my thing. So I like that it was something different, and admittedly, I enjoyed Khione sometimes, and also, I have to give credit to Daniela Panabaker, who, in my opinion, did a great job of making Caitlin and Frost and Khione feel distinctly different, as well as the different stages of Frost's character feel different. I think that she deserves credit for doing a good job with that. Like, again, I didn't mind what they did with it, but I'm two things about it, and then I'll shut up about Khione, is thank God they brought Caitlin back, because not that Caitlin's my favorite ever, but it was so weird to me, like, that they basically killed off Caitlin at the beginning of the season and with, like, no fanfare. Like, when Frost died, they did a full-on funeral episode that when you rewatch it, you're like, dude, nobody even was friends with Frost, really. And then when Caitlin dies, they act like they found out their Amazon package has been delayed. So I'm glad they brought her back. That felt right. It made the whole aspect of the storyline that didn't sit right with me feel better. Also, this was a huge missed opportunity to do real Killer Frost. Imagine how amazing it would have been if Caitlin's tragic attempts to bring back Frost turned her into the ice-cold, true, full villain Killer Frost, and that was one of the final villains they faced in the final season. I think that would have been such a beautifully tragic ending, because Killer Frost's storyline is one of the most all-over-the-place storylines in the entire series, and I believe it was truly just born out of them not wanting to lose Caitlin in Star Labs, but also do Frost, and it led to this absolutely balls-nuts storyline. Anyway, I just had to comment on that. But series overall, The Flash was not perfect. None of the Arrowverse shows were. And first of all, I want to say, I believe the Arrowverse in general deserves far more credit than it gets. I think what they accomplished was amazing. I think each season was filled with amazing moments, amazing castings, and amazing crossovers that are nothing short of historic. And the fact that it gets dismissed because it's on the CW pisses me off to no end. I really hope history is kinder to it. I know that it has some cringe parts and some CW stuff, but God, it really accomplished something. And I think even just if you don't like the delivery of it, like, can you not just acknowledge the achievement? So I hope history looks back at what they built here. While DC was the butt of the jokes during the MCU era, on the TV side, they were building something, even bigger than what Marvel's doing with the TV stuff. I know that that's a different thing. It's connected to the movies, and you can argue that's bigger. But, like, holy crap, dude. It was like 5+ shows, and they did these crossovers between 5+ shows that were deeply interconnected to a crazy level, especially when you rewatch it. It's nuts, dude. Anyway, point is, Flash was a mixed bag. There's a general consensus the early seasons were the best. I usually hate that consensus because I hate that nothing beats the original mentality, and I feel people will latch on to early installments of things and then never be able to accept anything that comes after. And in this case, I think it's true to a degree. I think that in the latter half of the series, there is some cool moments to be had. But the early seasons definitely were the best. I think the first three, that was one of my big takeaways from rewatching, is season 3 I had very mixed thoughts on the first time. Rewatching it, after seeing the modern era and getting rid of some of my baggage about my Flashpoint expectations, it's actually one of the best seasons of the show, in my opinion. I would revisit it. Those 3 seasons form kind of a nice trilogy, because the series could have ended on a bittersweet note with Barry sacrificing himself going into the Speed Force, asking Wally and Cisco to take over. If you watch it like that, honestly, it cleanly cuts off there. A lot sadder of an ending, but it's a nice trilogy. Season 4 is a little bit more of a mixed bag. They tried too hard to be fun a little bit. It's kind of like Arrow and The Flash. I think both discovered their perfect tone in terms of the balance of CW, comic bookiness, dark mystery in the first 2 seasons, and I think 3 went darker and they over-course corrected in 4. With that being said, 4 is actually really enjoyable. I think the Thinker stuff was mostly fun. They did a good job of tying Case of the Week stuff to the overall narrative. I really missed the Ralph character. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with all that, but he was the heart of that season and so enjoyable. Season 5 is one that gets a lot of heat, and understandably, I actually noticed more of the problems this time through. However, I have a soft spot for it because it's the last traditional feeling series of The Flash before we moved over to the Eric Wallace era. And for me, some of the complaints never bothered me because I never viewed Cicada as the main villain. I viewed it as Reverse Flash, and them paralleling Barry's dynamic with Wells in Season 1 to Wells' dynamic with Nora in this season was great. A lot of great stuff there that's underrated. And also, they killed off a full-on version of Nora. They kind of gloss over it later when they introduced Nora 2.0, but they killed off basically their daughter, and they treated it with some seriousness for a hot minute, and that was well done. I actually think Season 6 is a very underrated season. You know, the first, Bloodwork arc is actually a really tight arc that does a decent villain with some creepy vibes, and the themes about life and death and immortality led in really well to Crisis. I really appreciated the way they did that, where it was the story existed on its own with all those themes, but the fact that it led into Barry's state of mind going into Crisis was cool. And the Black Hole storyline in that season, I think, is vastly underrated. It was well built up to, the finale wasn't meant to be the finale because of COVID, but all the storylines converged with the Black Hole stuff and stuff going on with Barry and Ralph and Sue, and I'm really disappointed we never got to see more Ralph and Sue. I would have much rather seen further adventures of Ralph and Sue than I would have liked Chester and Cecile and stuff in the later seasons. But that season was good, and I think it was Candace Patton's finest hour, in my opinion. She did a great job, playing Iris unraveling in the mirror world, as well as villain Mirror Iris. Season 7 for me is far and away the worst. The first episodes are great because it, wraps up Season 6's storyline. The stuff with the Forces being Barry and Iris' children was weird as hell. I love the idea of expanding the Flash mythology. It's one of my favorite things about the show, but them making them their kids was weird. There was so many different ways they could have gone about it. I could go on a whole monologue of ways they could have approached it. That was weird. That was my least favorite arc in the whole show. The Godspeed stuff, Godspeed I think was a severely missed opportunity. Again, I don't mind deviating from the comics. Look at Hunter Zolomon is very different from the comics proper Eobard Thawne, the second Reverse Flash, which is actually Wally's Reverse Flash. But they did a good job of bringing together inspirations from like Hunter Zolomon and different characters and making their own thing. On the other hand, Godspeed just felt like a weird derivation of Zoom and Savitar with just something basic. And that was also a weird and disappointing arc. But there was at least some enjoyable episodes in there, like introducing Barry and Iris' kids again. The casting for both of them is pitch perfect. I honestly enjoyed them. I don't know if it's a hot take, but if we lived in a universe where the CW wasn't collapsed, I would have watched a XS and Impulse spinoff. Season 8 was a mixed bag for me. It never fully clicked, but I think that there was some enjoyable stuff in there. Getting one kind of major crossover event like Final with Armageddon was fun. Reverse Flashpoint was fun. There was some good stuff in the Deathstorm arc in regards to the build-up and mystery. There was some good standalone episodes as well, such as The Curious Case of Bartholomew Allen. I think that was a good one. Into the Still Force. So there was some good in there. And so my whole thing is, just to sum that up, I think that the early seasons, mainly 1 through 4, are the best, where Season 5 is kind of a mixed bag, middle ground. 6 through onwards is a bit of a mixed bag, but I think there is at least some good to be had there, and if you look at the show as a whole, I still enjoy it. I will say, before I get to my last final thought, I think the focus on side characters was one of the worst parts about the second half. I honestly liked Cecile Fine when she was introduced, and I think she had a place amongst the cast, as a metahuman lawyer. I think the way that they rolled her story from Season 4 into the Season 4's plot was actually really well done. Because it was kind of a comedic fun, like, oh, I'm hearing everyone's thought story, and then Harry's calling her D.A. Cecile Horton, her best storyline. And then, it all ended up being important. That was cool. But her being a main character and, a major superhero was so weird. It's like if Felicity's mom was part of Team Arrow in Season 7. It feels like somebody's parent trying to hang out with them to be cool. It didn't feel right at all. Allegra, I honestly liked Allegra okay, and I liked the idea of having a character that was part of a Team Citizen and Team Star Labs, but way too much focus on her, which apparently is because the showrunner created that character in the comics. Chester, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a Chester fan. No offense to Chester, or the actor. He had his moments. I laughed sometimes. There was some nice episodes. I liked the 90s episode with Cisco, but he was such a poor replacement for Cisco. It's funny because his character is so different than Cisco in regards to what his presentation is, but it's clearly they're trying too hard to replace Cisco. Even Cisco's more over-the-top moments always felt natural. His were just so forced and annoying, and the whole, Chester was so forced and annoying. So I'll just say that. I think that the focus on the side character was so weird, because even in the early seasons when you had more real-deal main characters like Cisco and Caitlin, they got their focus episodes, but they never had whole dedicated chunks of time to it. Alright, last 2 points. I'm going to hopefully make my time limit. The only 2 things I was really disappointed we didn't get to see was, number 1, over the course of the whole series, I would have loved to know more about original timeline Barry. Because if you don't remember, this whole show is in an alternate timeline where Barry becomes the Flash earlier, because Reverse Flash changed the timeline. I would have liked to know more about that original timeline where Barry became the Flash, presumably without his parents being killed. And then going sort of along with that, how did we not get a Reverse Flash flashback episode? I know a lot of people got sick of him again. Personally, again, I did not. But so many other villains, like the Thinker, who got 2 dedicated flashback episodes. How did we not get one for the Reverse Flash? He was such a major character, I would have loved to have seen that. But to sum up my thoughts overall, The series was mixed to be sure, but I think there's some absolutely strong stuff in the early years and some strong stuff overall, and I'm still always going to hold it in the Arrowverse in a special place in my heart, as it made me a Flash fan, encouraged me to read and check out the comics, get into the Flash mythology, which is one of my favorite, like my all-time, possibly my all-time favorite superhero mythology. Like, before this, I previously just knew, like, oh, Flash can run fast. I didn't know that like, led to, like, time travel and multiversal awesomeness, and yeah, so I'm always going to hold it a special place, both for making me a Flash fan and those early seasons, because it's easy to forget, but, like, this was, like, sort of at the high, not the height of the MCU, but, like, in some of the heights of the MCU, but then you had the Flash going, and people were really talking about seasons 1 and 2, and those were, as a magical time. People theorizing, and yeah, those were some great seasons. So, yeah, I was a little disappointed with the way the show ended. I wish we could have gotten a new showrunner and brought things back to the glory days, but I'm satisfied with where the characters ended. I still love the series overall, to be honest with you, and the Arrowverse, and I hope it gets the recognition it deserves in the future. But that's about it, guys. If you are a Flash fan or an Arrowverse fan, share your thoughts in the comments as always. Until next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.